a part of your future? Do you view that future as a center or as a guard?
Mm-hmm.
And his answer was both. So I think they're keeping their options open here. You
Right.
mentioned the low snaps. We all saw them.
Mm-hmm.
But even if he does have low snaps, there's no reason that Creed Humphrey, as we saw even in the Week 18 game when he was substituting in against the Chargers in that game that the Chiefs didn't have to win, he played some guard for them. There's no reason he couldn't be a really good guard in the NFL if the snaps just aren't a thing that have been fixed, that don't get fixed here in the future. So, as far as Hunter Norzad goes from Penn State, he's played all along the line as well. He's played center, guard. He's had some versatility in his career as well. And more naturally, you're talking about a fifth-round pick. Those guys can develop. Obviously, those guys can get better. But you're probably looking at what the Chiefs are trying to do is replace Nick Allegretti, who left in free agency this offseason. And he's been such a valuable piece for them that when one guy goes down, he could take care of any of those interior positions for the Chiefs. So I think you start Hunter at that particular spot and you say, hey, you're the backup. You're the guy who's going to teach you, these three different positions. If he excels at center, then maybe the Chiefs have a decision to make here in the future, and that's a really good problem to have. But, as for now, I think they're going to keep Creed in that spot, going to have him play and see if he can get those snaps taken care of. It's kind of been up and down and up for him in his career when it comes to the snaps, but I do think the Chiefs are keeping their options open. I would expect an extension for Creed Humphrey this offseason. He's part of their long-term future, I would think, and whether that comes at center or guard, I don't think it matters that much. It just matters that he's going to play good football for them in the future, and if you do have to replace the center, then you'll be able to find one out there somewhere. That's what the hope is for the Chiefs.
After the draft, of course, the teams quickly sign up a bunch of free agents. Was there anything that stood out to you?
Not too much, and those guys are usually long shots for the team, as we know. Not many of those, if any of them, not many at all made the team last year. I think the K-State kid, Echo Boydo, he made an impression just even as a rookie tryout kid and made it all the way to the team as a practice squad guy, sometimes elevated. So those stories remain few and far between. I will be watching a couple running backs for the Chiefs. I figured they were probably going to draft a running back, and then some things just didn't fall their way late in the draft. A guy like Dylan Laube was taken 3 picks ahead of their pick at 211, went to the Raiders. That's the sort of guy. He's really good out of the backfield from New Hampshire at catching passes. I figured he might be a guy the Chiefs would target just because it would play that Jerick McKinnon sort of role and be able to help on special teams. But they weren't able to draft a running back in this particular draft. So I will be watching to see those running backs because it sure seems like they could use one more. You know what I mean? It sure seems like there's an opening on that particular position. And like I said, potentially on their draft board, it seemed like a guy that they could take. But, I know they got a couple of guys in the free agency, looking real quick here that they'll bring in and potentially be able to have here. But one from Villanova, Io Duroje, he'll become the rookie minicamp. But TCU running back Amani Bailey's probably the one we'll be looking at the most. 5'9", 207 pounds. He rushed for 1,200 yards there, obviously in the Big 12. So those are the kind of guys you'll keep your eye on just because it sure seems like the Chiefs have a natural opening and an open position to potentially make the roster at that particular spot.
Just to have a little fun away from football, you obviously were on the KU beat for a long, long time. Bill Self was open in a couple of speeches after the season that things were going to be different this time around. My God, there's some of these free people who are coming in through the portal. They must be thinking, why so many? He's got like an all-star portal team, doesn't he?
Yeah, I will say this about Self. He's been really good at adapting to whatever the landscape is of college basketball. You know what I mean? There's been a lot of coaches, I think you heard, complain about the transfer portal, how much work it was, how you have to re-recruit your team, basically everything's free agency. It's just sort of changed exactly what coaches had to do in the last 10 years. And Self's quotes have basically been, hey, I don't make the rules. It's not my job to say yay or nay, but I'm going to take full advantage of what's out there. And so, you've seen him completely reload his roster after last season and probably going to be the preseason number one. Listen, they were preseason number one last year, too, after they got Hunter Dickinson in the portal. So this is a familiar place. Just some of the things you lose, though, watching last year's team when I did, on television, just some of the defensive fundamentals, some of the things that usually were not screwed up by kids that had been in the program 3 or 4 years under Self, where he'd yell at them at practice and make sure that those were non-negotiables. It's hard to get portal kids to buy into that, you know what I mean? Because you've had them for only 2 or 3 months. So this is a different landscape. I don't blame Kansas for going out and getting the best players. It's sort of like if you were in the NBA, would you rather build your team with rookies or with free agents? Obviously, you take free agents. You want the known rather than the unknown. But it does make for a little bit different brand of Kansas basketball. And we know Bill Self's had so much success in the past with the Ochai Agbaji's, the Christian Browns, of the Dave McCormick's of the world who have been in this system and understand him so well after 3 or 4 years. Those days are probably gone, but that doesn't mean that the KU's not going to be talented. Obviously, they brought in a lot of talent, and they do get that preseason number 1, and that's something Self has earned with all the recruiting he's done here the last couple months.
Jesse, always great stuff. We appreciate your time on a busy weekend for you, and look forward to talking to you down the line.
All right, appreciate it, Danny.
And we got a lot more coming up on our Monday Musings. Royals in Detroit, Sporting Kansas City, other soccer, a little bit of everything. I'll handle it coming up next, right here on Monday Musings. Danny and Friends Sports Wrap, presented by ASFCA.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
We're here at the 23rd Street Brewery with Matt Llewellyn. And Matt, basketball's over, football's still a few months away, but there's always fun to be had at the 23rd Street Brewery.
Absolutely. We've always got something going on here. The games are always going on. It's a great place to come enjoy everything out on the patio. Beautiful scenery out there. Great beer. I've got a great brewer, great food. It's always fun here at the brewery.
And the atmosphere is great and friendly and warm, too.
We always want to make sure you're a lot happier when you leave than you were when you came in.
Always fun here at the 23rd Street Brewery at 23rd and Castle. Make sure to come by when you're in Lawrence. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. If you'd like to join these and other fine sponsors and market your business to Kansas City's #1 variety podcast, contact us at Danny@DannyClinkscale.com. Look forward to working with you. Welcome back. Well, it's 25 runs in 8 games for the Kansas City Royals, but has that translated into disaster? No, it has not. They have split their last 8 games. They have played 29 games now. They're 17-12, and in more than half of them, they have scored 3 runs or less, and somehow in those games, they are 8-7, over 500. My friend Curtis Seabolt, while I was on Danny Unleashed on Friday, was looking up the numbers which I couldn't find, and it turns out that if you score 3 runs or less, historically in Major League Baseball, you win just barely over 20% of your games, and the Royals have won over 50%. So clearly that's not a prescription for success, but they have those wins in the bank. You can't take them away. And we'll see how it goes, but they need to start hitting a little bit. The pitching continues to be great. The starting pitching, even on a day when it's not super, like in a 4-1 loss to the Tigers yesterday, Michael Wacha still gets almost through 6 innings and gives up just the 4 runs, but the Royals do nothing on offense after grabbing an early 1-0 lead, and they're just not hitting, and a lot of guys aren't hitting. And one couple of guys who are hitting are Bobby Witt and Salvador Perez. Perez has just been remarkable. He's 3rd in all of Major League Baseball as far as runs batted in is concerned. If you want an old-timey stat, if you want a new-timey stat, his OPS is well over 900. In fact, way over 900, approaching 1,000. Bobby Witt Jr.'s got his almost to 900, but those are about the only 2 guys who have hit consistently all season long. Michael Garcia has had a good road trip, and he's got things going a little bit after a long, rough patch. He had another hit yesterday. He's hitting 5 consecutive games, but there's not been much else. Nelson Velazquez is at 222 after an 0 for 3. Michael Massey has come up from the minors and not hit very much, just over 200. The bottom part of the lineup just has been a black hole, and it can't continue to be that way. Vinny Pasquantino has stopped hitting. MJ Melendez has stopped hitting. Both of them just came on as pinch hitters in the game yesterday. Hunter Renfroe hasn't hit all season long, 149 on the season. So that's got to change because the Royals, in some ways, have overcome their offense, but they've also wasted tremendous starting pitching. Still right in the mix at 17-12, and the Tigers with 2 out of 3 are 16-12. It's a division now that really is a surprising one in baseball. What you looked at before the year was that maybe it was going to be a weak division, and the problem for the Royals so far is not only has it not been a weak division, it's been a good one, but also in the division, they haven't played particularly well. And the Guardians now are playing great baseball. They are among baseball's best teams at 19-9. The Royals are in second place. The Tigers are 4 games over 500. They're in third. The Twins have ripped off 7 consecutive wins at just the right time for them, and they are 4.5 games back, and the White Sox have even won 3 games in a row to go from historically miserable to just plain awful. Their winning percentage is still .214, which would, translated over a full season, set a major league record for losses, and that's the only team that so far everybody's been able to beat up on. But the division's been tougher than advertised, and the Royals still hanging in there, playing good ball and playing very well at home. The road has not been great, but it hasn't been terrible either. 5-7, hanging around 500 there. It's going to be a tough series in Toronto. The Blue Jays haven't really played as well as they can, probably, 4 of their last 10. A couple of those losses, obviously, when they matched up at Kauffman Stadium. They play in Toronto 4-3 starting tonight. The Yankees, even with Aaron Judge only recently hitting, are leading the American League East at 19-10. The Orioles have been consistently good all season long and just game back and basically tied in the loss column, 17-10 on the season. The Red Sox have been surprising. Yeah, their run differential's good. They're 3 games over 500. They've pitched it very well. So they are probably one of the surprise teams at baseball. As mentioned, maybe the Blue Jays are one of the downer teams in baseball. The Rays have hit the skids. They just lost 3 to the White Sox. Nobody wants to do that, and they're the only team below 500 in the American League East. The American League West has been the division that has struggled the most. The Mariners just a couple over 500, but that's good for first place. They've won 7 of their last 10. The Texas Rangers have been sort of iffy and hanging on, basically sort of middling so far. They're in second place. The Athletics have played better than most people expected, not like 12-17 is something to write home about. The Angels had it going for a while, but they have lost 9 of their last 10, despite the fact that Mike Trout has 10 home runs and is back in vintage form. And the Astros won a couple of games in Mexico City over the weekend, but they got a long way to go. Those 2 wins just pushed them to 9-19 for the team that has been in the American League Championship Series 7 consecutive years. They were 7-19, and a team that has lost 19 of their first 26 games has only made the postseason 1 time in the history of baseball. That's the 1914 Miracle Braves, who actually would win the World Series that year. The Astros, I think, would take the postseason right now. Still 10 games under 500, and they've won 1 game this year where they've scored 3 runs or less, as opposed to the Royals, who have won 8 of them. So there you see that that's more like what happens when you don't score runs. The Braves are rollicking along. They're great in the National League, 19-7. So are the Phillies. Both of those teams are hot. The Mets have been, I guess, a little better than advertised, although 14-13 is nothing special. The Nationals have been better than advertised, and 1 game under 500 is exceedingly good by the standards that they were expected to have. Marlins made the postseason last year despite a negative run differential, and now they have a negative run differential, and they're losing games, which is more what happens when you do that. They are 6-23 on the season. The Brewers just continue to be a fine franchise, under the radar, consistently good, have made the playoffs most of the years over the last 6 or 7. They lost their manager, Craig Counsell, but have kept on humming. But Counsell's doing a good job with the Cubs. They're 17-11 on the season. And the Reds are a couple games over 500 and right in it. The Pirates have done their usual thing so far, which is to get off to a very, very good start and then cool off and probably get another run in them. We'll see that. And the Cardinals, who were disappointing last year, are disappointing again. They're below 500. Dodgers are not disappointing. They were wallowing around at the 500 mark, but then won 7 consecutive games. They did lose yesterday. They're in first place In the West, the nondescript Giants are in second place, right about 500. That's the kind of team they are. I bet you couldn't name more than a handful of Giants, if any, if you can name any.